to all of your property in a divorce. So here is a full breakdown of who gets what. So thinking about a divorce or already in the middle of one and wondering who is going to get everything, are you going to lose everything? Let me tell you about this. What you don't know about property division can cost you a house, a car, or even your retirement. But you're not alone. You don't have to guess. Hello, I'm Randall Borden. I'm a family law attorney practicing in Virginia and Maryland for over 30 years. In this video, I'll break down exactly how courts divide property, what you get to keep, how things get split, and what you might lose if you don't protect yourself. Please stick around to the end because reveal the one mistake that most people make over and over again, and they don't realize it until it's too late. So first concept to understand about a divorce is the difference between marital property and separate property. So basically, marital property is what you acquire during the marriage, and separate property is what you acquire before the marriage or after the marriage. But it can get complicated. So sometimes it gets blended. So if you have a retirement account, then you get married, then you get divorced, that is part marital and part separate, because some of the money went into it from your salary before the marriage, some of your money went into it from your salary during the marriage. It's also called hybrid property. So it's part marital, part separate. You have to go through and calculate out how much of it is marital, how much of it is separate, and generally the courts will divide the marital share 50-50. So the big picture, not everything gets split 50-50. The courts can divide only what's marital property, not everything that you own. And things that you inherit during the marriage are separate property. Things that you get as gifts during the marriage are separate property. But remember, things that you buy with your salary or with your paycheck, that's marital property, because your salary or paycheck is considered to be marital property, and they trace it. So they follow the money, they trace it over to what you buy with your salary. So that remains marital property, even though it takes a different form. So to review, marital property are assets acquired during the marriage, even if your name or the other party's name is on the deed or the title or the account. So the courts don't look at that. They look at who actually owns it, and they trace where the funds came from. And again, separate assets would be assets acquired before the marriage, assets acquired during the marriage, such as gifts and inheritances. And as always, there are exceptions to these rules. So if someone gave a gift to both of you, to the husband and to the wife, then that's marital property. For example, if you bought a house before the marriage and had a mortgage, you paid on it out of your salary, and then you got married, then everything that went into your house before the marriage is considered separate property. But during the marriage, even if only one spouse worked, that money might have gone to pay household living expenses, a car note, anything except the house. Well, since it was the salary of each party that was used, then that's portion that it built up during the marriage would be considered marital property. And again, this would be a complicated situation. You need a spreadsheet. Sometimes you might even need a bookkeeper or an accountant to separate out or to trace the marital and the non-marital, or the marital and the separate property. So here are some common asset disputes and what happens. So the property that most people fight over is the household goods. Please divide those yourself. Don't involve a lawyer in that. You don't want to be fighting over collections or mattresses or things like that. Just solve that on your own. Cars are usually the same. One spouse has a car, the other spouse has a car. You just keep whichever car you're driving now, and then you can adjust for the values. One car might have a car loan, the other car might be free and clear. Okay, figure out the numbers and then adjust it accordingly. So the best advice is don't fight over cars. Then there's the big one, of course, is the house. Now, if you acquire the house during the marriage, then it's marital property. But it can get complicated real fast. Like supposing someone's parents gave money for the down payment. Well, that's a gift, but is it a gift to one child, to one spouse, or is it a gift to the couple? So that's something that can be litigated over. Also, a lot of times you will refinance the house, you take money out. Well, what happened to the money that you took out? They trace that or they follow the money. You generally end up using one or more spreadsheets when you're dealing with a house. A similar fight is retirement accounts. So people might have their own retirement accounts. So you want to balance that out and then adjust the numbers. So it sounds easy. However, if you had a retirement account before the marriage and you brought it into the marriage, you might have had a retirement account before the marriage and then rolled it over into a new account during the marriage. Again, you trace it, and whatever the nature of the original money, whether it was separate money or marital money, then wherever that goes, it still retains its nature. And again, retirement accounts can get complicated. What if you took money out of the account? What if you borrowed money out? What did you use the money for? So again, you typically would need a spreadsheet, and the numbers go back all the way to the date of the marriage. So another very complicated situation is if one of the spouses owns a business. So the first question, hopefully you're understanding it now, is was the business built up before the marriage? Was it started before the marriage, or was it started during the marriage? So if it was started before the marriage, again, it's going to be part separate and part marital, but then it grows, hopefully. That's why the business still exists. So then you're going to have to figure out the growth of the separate share and compare that to the growth of the marital share. And again, the business, money goes in, money goes out. Where did that money come from? And to the extent that it came from a gift or an inheritance, that would be separate property. But again, once it gets into the business, where does it go from there? And then, so those are the big assets that people normally fight over. And there are others. I mean, you could fight over pets. You could fight over a collection or mementos, things like that. But the big ones are house, retirement accounts, cars, and business. But of course, people also fight over debt. So the same analysis: was the debt incurred before the marriage or during the marriage? And if it was incurred during the marriage, was it incurred for the benefit of the marriage or for the benefit of an individual? So gambling debt would not be marital debt. So also debt that is incurred after the separation is generally considered separate debt. But again, you got to trace it. So you took on debt after the separation, but where did that debt go? And so the debt on the mortgage on the house, that's kind of, or on a car loan, that's kind of obvious. You needed to put that debt to buy the house. So the debt, the nature of the debt tracks the nature of the asset that it's secured by. But again, if it is debt put onto a business, money was taken out, what was that money used for? It can get very complicated very fast. So the way that the judges decide this, I guess the easiest and the most complicated, ironically, would be a retirement account. So hopefully what you do is you can go to the retirement fund, the plan administrator, and get your records all the way back to when you got married. From that point, then, and you want to figure out how much you had in the retirement account on the date of marriage. Then moving forward, how much money did you put in? How much money did you take out? If you took money out, what did you do with it? So again, you're going to have to use a spreadsheet or hire an accountant who's familiar with marital breakups like this one. A good lawyer can refer you one, and I do have one that I'd be happy to refer to you. Just give me a call. Cars are generally not fought over that much. They generally lay themselves out. So there's usually two cars, perhaps more. There's usually two cars. So one spouse gets one, that they get the one they've been driving the whole time. The other spouse gets one, they get the one that they've been driving the whole time. And if there's any adjustment, sometimes we litigate over many, many cars that have no value. and the the fight is who's gonna have to pay to haul them away. So as far as the house goes, that can get real complicated real fast. Supposing one spouse puts up money for the down payment, but the other spouse has a really good credit score, and that credit score helps them acquire the house or acquire a bigger house. So should the spouse be given credit for the great credit score that allowed them to buy a house with a big mortgage, even though the other spouse brought the money? So the answer is it depends. And there are cases where that does get you a shake. So you can contribute your credit score to the house and get a share. Business ownership is also very complicated. So, what is the business? Is the business just a personal service business like a law firm, where if that individual is not there, nothing is happening? Or is it another business like a shopping center that's generating money? It might operate with a private management company. So even if the owners are not there on the spot, the business continues, the tenants pay the rent, the management company makes sure that the maintenance occurs and everything is done correctly. So you have to look at the nature of that business to determine how it would be valued. That becomes a valuation question. And again, you're going to need somebody to say what that's worth. And they have experts that can testify in court. They would come in, look at the property. Most common, of course, is an appraisal on a piece of real estate, but even that can get complicated if it's a unique piece of real estate, if it's not a regular single family house, or if it's in bad shape or in very good shape, overbuilt. It's a tear down and the only value is for the building lot. That can get, like I said, real complicated real fast. And as far as the debt, what was the debt used for? So again, you want to trace it. If one spouse ran up a huge credit card debt, but used it, so you have to get the credit card bills and you have to look at them. So what were the credit card debts used for? Was it used for vacations, fun, a mistress, something that did not benefit the marriage, or was it used for food and clothing, the marriage, for the children, or an improvement to the real estate? You can charge up a kitchen renovation, for example. So you have to trace that. Again, the tracing, another concept that you have to get in your head. So there's marital property versus separate property, and then you have to trace or follow the money, and not only trace it, but be able to document it. So you might have your pension, that you had your pension before the marriage, but if you don't have the records going back that far, then you might be in trouble trying to convince a judge that part of that pension is separate property, should go to you and not be split evenly. So what are mistakes that people make in their divorce? Well, a lot of people will give up too soon. I think that's probably because they don't understand how a divorce works, or how the financial part of a divorce, how the money part of a divorce works. They get frustrated. Things seem to be dragging on too long. The other side's not cooperating. The other side doesn't provide the information that they're requested. You have to end up going to the third parties. You have to subpoena the credit cards, subpoena the bank accounts, subpoena the employer, subpoena the business, subpoena the retirement fund, and it takes time. And then once you get it, then you have to sit down and you calculate it. Like I said, spreadsheets are very common in this situation. The mistake people make is not documenting their finances after separation. So you want to be able to show that clean break. And so anything after that is separate, that you acquire after that is separate property. And remember, you have to not just show it as the sale or the purchase. You have to show it, trace the source of the funds. Another mistake people make is relying upon verbal agreements. I mean, people don't like to hire lawyers. They believe that the other side is trustworthy or has a good memory, and they believe that a verbal agreement or a promise made years ago is sufficient. Well, it's not. It has to be either in writing, signed by you and your spouse, or in writing, signed by a judge. That's the safest way to do it. So don't go into this process without a lawyer. Dividing property in divorce isn't about winning or losing. It's about making the correct calculations. And if you go into a consultation with an attorney, they'll ask you what property you have, what debt you have, when it was acquired, before the marriage, during the marriage, paid for with your salary? Was it paid for? Did you get any gifts or inheritances? So if you want more information about this, and it's a complicated topic, and answer or leave a remark or a question in the notes to this video. I could prepare a video just on a particular asset. I think that would be helpful. Like retirement account can get very complicated. A particular method of calculating, for example, the house. There are different methods for determining what is marital and what is separate. If you're interested in that, just leave a remark and I'd be happy to do it. So just remember that you've worked hard for what you have and you don't want to lose it just because of a mistake or just because you want to save money on lawyers. Thank you.